Welcome to Hungary. Hello, in Hungarian. This is always a daunting prospect to bring together an overflowing crowd, both to celebrate what we've done in the past, to gather our thoughts, focus our attention, and define what we're going to do in the next 6 months. We carry, I think, a very serious responsibility, and that is to bring free software to the widest possible audience, to whole new classes of audience. And we have to take that responsibility very seriously. And those of you who are new to UDS will see that that is really what it's all about. How do we do justice to the extraordinary work of the whole free software community? How do we distill that work? How do we present it in a way that makes us proud and also makes the people who built it, our upstream communities, proud as well? So that responsibility is what this week is all about. Are we click? Yeah, we are. First of all, I want to say thank you and an extraordinary well done for a phenomenal effort around Natty Narwhal. I think the whole community deserves a thunderous round of applause for what we achieved in Natty. More than anybody else, I think I'm probably aware of how difficult and challenging Natty was. I think it was one of our most profoundly challenging cycles for many different reasons, and yet I think as a community, we achieved many of the things that we set out to do. Our work is not yet done, but we achieved many of the things that we set out to do. Transitions are difficult. We have built an extraordinarily large community around a set of values, but we are in the middle of a transition. And it is perfectly reasonable, perfectly normal for there to be questioning, challenging, debate around a transition like the one that we made in Natty. And so that conversation certainly started during last cycle and will continue during this coming cycle. But I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that I think we did with class in the last cycle. Our documentation team, where are the documentation team? One guy sticks up his hand. So the Ubuntu documentation team faced a really tough challenge, right? We had decided that we were going to move to Unity as our shell. Our position is that Unity is part of the broader GNOME platform, which is a view that's shared with quite a lot of people in GNOME, although it's not universally shared. But the people I think who really felt this the most were the people in the documentation team. And I'm really proud of the fact that the Ubuntu documentation team made a major contribution both to the GNOME 3 documentation and to the documentation for Ubuntu with Natty as the default shell. So I just wanted to celebrate that and thank you guys for your contributions to both projects and for spanning that divide with sort of grace and eloquence that we would celebrate here in Ubuntu. So thank you. We made major steps on accessibility in Unity. We knew that we couldn't move to an entirely Unity-based environment until we had accessibility absolutely sorted. Accessibility is one of our core values as a project, and so I want to thank Luke and several other people who made substantial contributions to that. We have a lot more work to do, and that work will get finished in this coming cycle. So Luke and the other folk who led that, thank you very much as well. There is a sense in which we're starting to see real leadership and innovation here in the Ubuntu community. And that's one of the things that I think it's reasonable for us to debate and discuss. My view on this, and it's just one view, is that we are in the crucible. We see what users experience. We get it raw. For most free software projects, I would not be surprised to find if there are more bugs filed against that piece of free software in Ubuntu than upstream. And that's not because we necessarily make changes that cause those bugs. Sometimes it is, and we accept that, we deal with those are our responsibility. But in many cases, it's just because we're the conduit, we're the place where that free software lands in users' hands. That gives us, again, that's an awesome responsibility, but it also gives us a unique perspective. And I think it gives us a responsibility to take some ownership in that experience that users have. And we're starting to see the signs of that, both in terms of taking responsibility for the user experience, the end user experience, participating in discussions both upstream and in this community, and leading around tools. For example, again, our docs team joined up with, for example, the Association of Professional Communicators to see if we could really elevate the art and science of documentation in free software globally. So that's real leadership coming from within this community for free software, which I'm particularly proud of. Unity itself is a work that I'm very close to, and so I have to be a little cautious because obviously when you're that close to something, your judgment is fundamentally colored. Nevertheless, I think we've set a new bar for disciplined design in free software, for actually going through a rigorous process, a design process, testing work against users' actual experience of that, testing our assumptions, iterating based on that testing, and ultimately shooting for the stars. Again, our goal, our mission is 200 million users of Ubuntu within 4 years. Now, we can only do that if we realize that we're not playing a game for developers' hearts and minds. We're playing a game for the world's hearts and minds. And to achieve that, we're going to have to play by a new set of rules. That doesn't mean that we're going to abandon in any way, shape, or form, right, a developer community. I'm a developer, you're all developers, and I think you appreciate stability, robustness, and design. So developers need all the same things that consumers need and more. But by focusing on consumers, by focusing on our mission, and making sure that when there is conflict, tension, uncertainty, we ask ourselves, what is our mission? And how do we respond to that mission in this case? I think we will make the most progress. At a time like this, when the project is going through change, I think it's important for us to restate and reaffirm our values. When you grow quickly, it's possible to attract people because there's a lot of buzz, right? We're now going through a phase when lots of folks are going to say, okay, why am I here? What is this all about? What do I really believe in? Is this the right place for me to be? We want participation and contribution. We're open to it. We spend a lot of time and effort figuring out how to smooth that process and make that fun and engaging for people. But we also need to recognize that it makes sense only for people to participate if they share our values. So I wanted to restate some of what those are. The first value that I think is intrinsic to Ubuntu is governance. We have a very clearly stated model of governance. And really, that's a model of responsibilities. We essentially say we want to create a meritocracy, right, which is kind of a designed meritocracy. It's not a democracy, right? Our goal is to make sure that wherever there are hard decisions being taken, we have the best people taking those decisions. Now, very clearly, it does not matter if those people work for Canonical or don't. There's some confusion on that subject that is absolutely clear in my mind. It doesn't matter. There is no post within the Ubuntu project, no responsibility, no portion of the governance structure which is exclusively for Canonical. We have, for example, tried for a long time to get non-canonical participation in the technical board. We're starting to achieve that with Scott moving to Google and with Matt moving on. So that's not the ideal way to achieve that goal. Just a quick word with members of the technical board. Fundamentally, our governance is aimed at making sure that in each place where we have tough decisions to make, right, we have people who are best qualified and most empowered to make those decisions. And then we trust them to make those decisions. To be functional as a project at our scale and bigger, we cannot put people in a position where we say we trust them and then second guess everything they do, right? So one of our values really is getting stuff done. And there are other ways to run projects, and in a free world, in an open source world, luckily, there are lots of projects run by lots of different ways. Our value is governance, and getting stuff done. But again, I wanted to state very clearly, there's nothing closed about the roles in that governance structure. Our desktop team makes decisions about what's best for the desktop. Our server team makes decisions about what's best for the server. Our technical board makes decisions about what keeps this project technically healthy, the people we bring in, the way we tackle things, the cycle, the cadence. The release management team takes decisions about when we'll release, and we trust them, we follow their decisions. We can escalate, but only within the governance model of our project. That is how we will be both free software and highly effective. It's really, really important. It goes, though, with accountability. So I do feel that anybody who takes responsibility on in Ubuntu is accountable to you, to the members and contributors and users of Ubuntu. That starts with me, and it goes through the entire structure of governance of the project. So I have no problem with being challenged, questioned, and asked to explain a position. Neither should anybody who takes on responsibilities within Ubuntu. But we have to separate that accountability from challenging and stopping execution and the ability to take decisions, right? We have time, we have place to make sure that we have the right people in the right place taking decisions. If you're stressed about decisions that have been taken, and I know that will happen, right, ask yourself, if anybody had to be taking that decision, do we have the people that on balance you think should be taking decisions? That is the test. I had a call with the Community Council to talk about some of these challenges. It was a very fruitful call. Community Council is, I think, one of the governance structures in Ubuntu which is most important and most represents the whole of the community, not just one aspect of it. It has very little in the way of canonical participation specifically. And the Community Council is responsible for community engagement and practices and policies, how we set up governance, essentially. So they had a lot of questions about some of these issues, and a lot of comment. We talked about many things. One of the things that became clear is that there's a sense of a lack of transparency. It is certainly true that over the last 2 years, Canonical's ability to take a view and to bring that view to fruition has increased dramatically. We've always taken the view that, folks who lead in Ubuntu are able to make the decisions they think are necessary to make it the best product. Sometimes those decisions are grand and they get adopted elsewhere. Sometimes they flop and they don't. Those of you who can remember Ubuntu Spatial know that we have a long and proud history of taking bold decisions and then saying, well, perhaps that wasn't ideal. And I think that's a valuable kind of courage to have. At the same time, we need to figure out how to be more transparent. So I've asked folk within Canonical to challenge themselves even more than we currently do about how we get decisions out. We do have a very strong culture of saying, take this decision to Ubuntu Deval or to IRC or to a public team. If you work for Canonical, you know this. Nevertheless, I think some of the decisions that I've taken and others have been essentially delivered as concluded decisions. Now, intellectually, I think it's more honest if you have a view to state that view definitively. I don't want to play any games, and I would not ask anyone at Canonical to play any games by saying, we're thinking about doing this, when in fact, this is something that we believe is essential for the project, where there are people who are in a position to take those decisions. So this must be an honest kind of transparency. But you can expect and you can reasonably demand discussion of the sorts of fundamental changes that we've made, and that will be the case. At the same time, one of the things that makes Ubuntu powerful is the fact that we bring together community and companies, multiple companies, to make one platform which we believe can go to the whole world. We don't say, community, here's a nice playground. You can do whatever you like in this playground, and then we're going to take your work and make a product out of it, right? That's a model. I respect that model. It works in some cases, but I think it fundamentally disempowers the community to have a real relationship with end users. I want Ubuntu to be a place where everybody's work, Canonical, community, everybody's work goes straight and untouched into the hands of users on the terms that I think free software should be developed. That is unique and powerful. Bringing those two values together is important. We have to recognize that in that world, the different players who are coming together have different constraints. One of the things that makes Canonical potent, and the other companies that participate in Ubuntu potent, is that they can engage and do engage commercially with major players. That's what makes Ubuntu amazing. We are going to put it in the hands of 200 million people. We can only do it because of that. And we should not take that, as a community, we should not take that for granted. So this is not an absolute one way or the other. This is a value that we hold, and this is going to require mutual respect as we go forward. The role of companies in Ubuntu is one of the definitive and unique characteristics. We should not undermine it. We should not undervalue it. It is one of the things that has made Ubuntu truly great. One of the really difficult questions that has come up again and again has been the question of contribution agreements and copyright assignment. And in the way I've handled this issue, I think I've failed as a leader. And that is going to change today. I have very strong views, I think principled views, on what it will take to build a collaborative ecosystem between communities and companies. One of those things is that we're going to have to learn as community members, and this goes for me when I'm talking about other projects, we're going to have to learn to respect the needs of people who work subject to different constraints and have different requirements to us. One of our key values is collaboration, but I think in the open source community we misunderstand collaboration. We think that two people getting together who have exactly the same values, exactly the same way of working, exactly the same interests, exactly the same goals, we think that's collaboration. It's not, it's teamwork. Real collaboration is when you bring together people who have different goals, different constraints, differences, and they find a way to work together. That's not something that's celebrated often enough in open source, in my view. What we have is people say, you should be collaborating, but you should change this, change that, change the next thing in order to collaborate. I don't think so. I think collaboration is a conversation around the code, right? And how we can work together to get a great result in the code and make that available as free software. When we start saying, before we talk about that, we're going to set a whole bunch of ideological constraints down, we're actually putting barriers in the way of collaboration. Now, the reason I think I failed in this is because the views that I hold are based on a vision of free software as the de facto standard way that industry does software, right? I don't think it is going to be, however, the only way that industry does software. I think we need to figure out how to get companies into the free software ecosystem in a way where their contribution is actually valued and respected. I think we also need to go beyond the state that we're in today, where the only companies who can actually participate are companies that don't focus on software, right? If you look at most of the contributions to free software from companies today, they come from companies that do hardware or have other services, and the software is a means to an end. As a result, we have, in vast tracts of free software, second-class options. We need to be honest about that. We need to be honest about the fact that iOS and Android have created transformative ecosystems in the face of a monopoly from Microsoft, and we haven't, right? In order to understand that, we need to be willing to tackle some sacred cows. This is one of them. So from today, I'm going to start making a public case for why we need to rethink our community position on this. I understand that my position is the minority one. I understand it's the difficult one. But you know what? Most of the real changes in history that I admire and respect have been led by people who took a difficult position. So I'm willing to take that. I think it's the right one. Where I think I failed is that I simply said, because I have these principled views, Canonical will follow this policy. And I haven't made that case strongly enough within Canonical, and I certainly haven't made it publicly. And I will start that process now. Anyway, for the moment, all I can ask you for is mutual respect for a position. And I would ask you to start thinking really carefully about this, really carefully about generosity. You know, the first time copyright assignment came up to me, I said flat out no. We were asked to sign a copyright agreement for Novell, and I said no. And I couldn't sleep that night because I felt like a real idiot. I felt like that was one of the least generous things I'd ever said, right? That here was an institution that had done an enormous amount of work from which we were benefiting. We had done some work of which we were proud, and yet I refused to give that to them, and I couldn't sleep. The next day, I changed our position. And I started to see things differently. I started to see the value of having institutions make the investments that they make. Ownership brings responsibilities. Responsibilities that you either need to be willing to take in full, or you need to be willing to be generous if you don't want to take all of those responsibilities in full. I've come to a love of gardening in the last year since I moved to a place where gardens are common. And it's wonderful. You know, gardening is like coding. It's wonderfully satisfying work. You make stuff, you see stuff grow. And an analogy for me is this. If someone were to show up and to say, you know, here's a plant, I think it would look beautiful in your garden, and then say, but you can't sell the house after this, that would be difficult for me. I think I would say, keep the plant. Thanks for the idea. I might go down to the nursery and get that plant. I appreciate that, but keep the plant. I have a vegetable patch, and I don't have time to make vegetables, but it's a beautiful vegetable patch, and I do have time to put chicken shit on it, you know, regularly. So lots of things would grow, and I'm willing to put the chicken shit on the ground, right? I'm willing to do that work. But I think I'm going to offer up an allotment and invite someone who doesn't have that space, right, to come in on the weekends when they would like to, whenever they want, and grow vegetables. And that would be great because I would get vegetables, they would get vegetables, they would get the satisfaction. But again, if they said, you can't sell the house, I don't think that would be collaboration. I don't think that would be generous on their part. The upside for me is that, you know, debate is all about making people think and potentially changing their minds. I think the upside on this case is all on my side. But I accept that this is going to be a difficult and important conversation. All I ask now is that you think about this and that we start to have a conversation about this that's based on mutual respect. We find ways to collaborate with people who take a different position to us. And I hope that that is the true value of this community. So one of my fondest memories of all that Ubuntu means was knocking on the door of a house in Los Angeles which had no carpet because it had been flooded the week before. And Matt welcomed me into his house, and we had a fun weekend together. He introduced me to Johnny Cash, which tragically I'd never heard his music before. What's that? Not in person, no. but his music. Matt you have made the most extraordinary contributions, both to Ubuntu, the project, to Debian as well, our rock, and to Canonical. Matt yesterday was taking credit for calling UDS, but I think that was missing the real point. Matt, you can take credit for big chunks of what Ubuntu is today, in how we do it, and in how we feel about it. So I think everybody here will join me in celebrating this extraordinary contribution that Matt has made. Matt, you. Do you want to say a few words? I think it's mic up front.
Thank you. It's been... Okay, I can walk around. Is this on? No. Yeah, it's on. Okay. So thank you so much. It's been an incredible 7-year journey to get to this point, and it's every time it's been a thrill to see a room full of people like this geared up to do it all over again and reinvent the project and reinvigorate what we're doing and what we stand for. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for that warm recognition. One of the great things about being a part of a project and a company like this is that because we're an open project, because all of this goes on, that moving on to a new job, making a change professionally, doesn't mean that you have to say goodbye to all of your friends. So I look forward to seeing all of you more online, maybe at a future event like this. Hope to spend lots more time together. Thank you.
Right. Our mission for the week starts with a challenge. How the hell do you pronounce that? So this is a Greek word sort of in English. Anyway, so I've been struggling with this. I know other people have been struggling with this. So I figured we have to take, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We just, as a community, need to come to a sense of how we're going to do this. So I think we're going to do this together. And to help us in that, I know there's some people here who do improv. So anyone who does improv, do you want to come forward? So we've got 2 candidates over here. This is slightly so. Yeah? Come on up. So, I've heard lots of different variations on this word, but the one thing that is consistent always is the rick at the end. So we need a rick. We need a rick. Any rick will do, but I have one in mind. Where's the rick? Right here. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Spencer. I've blown my time budget, but we'll just roll on. All right, so what I thought we'd do, come on, Rick. What I thought we'd do is we'd act out some different pronunciations of that word, and then we can figure out together which one we like best. So I'm going to start out by just throwing one out. One is Oneiric. All right, another one. We need another one. Oneiric. Oneiric. We need another one. Huh? Oneiric. Any more? Oneiric. Oneiric.
Oneiric.
No, Oneiric.
Oneiric.
Any others? Oneiric. Oh. Well, good luck, guys.
I don't even know what that is.
Nai is a very rude word in Afrikaans, so
Yeah.
All right. So I think the best pronunciation for this is Oneiric. And if you guys are happy with it, should we? Oneiric? Oneiric? Oneiric it is. Thank you, guys.
And we'll add it to the spell check.
All right, I have completely blown my time budget for this. My apologies to those stepping up next. So this week, we'll frame Oneiric. And my job here is really just to highlight a few things that I think are going to be highlights in that conversation. There are going to be hundreds of things discussed and decided. The people who are going to be making those decisions will be leading sessions or will be participating in sessions. If you think you should be making decisions or contributing to them, now's the time to be there. And then we get stuff done from next week onwards. So one very significant decision that I think we need to take, and we need to take it, we have all the information, I think, here in the room, all the knowledge here in the room, is a cloud platform for 1110 and then for 1204 LTS. So that conversation is going to be happening today. I hope that the server team will be in a position to take a decision tonight. We have folk here from both Eucalyptus and Rackspace and OpenStack. And I think this is going to be one of the most important conversations. If you have an interest in that conversation or data to share, then please participate in those, because this is one of the conversations that we really need to nail early, so we have the week to figure out how we make that real. Other conversations you'll be glad to know that there are no major profound shifts coming. I see this cycle on the desktop as an evolution and an iteration, but I think there are some very significant things. Thunderbird, I know, has been proposed for default mail client, which would be a very significant shift. I know that there are conversations around Chromium and Firefox, and other conversations around LightDM. So there are some some quite visible topics on the table for discussion. I can't do justice to all of them here, and keep an eye on the schedule and participate in those which you think you can add the most value to. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week.